No, you should not be upset that Notre Dame gets a break in the new playoff format.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Don't forget it. Don't forget it amidst all this craziness. Are we bringing back the Texas A&M hype train? Just a little. It's not all the way on the tracks, but it has like 3 out of 4 wheels. I know a train has more than that, but just for simplicity purposes, it's got like 3 out of 4. And Colorado versus Nebraska, yes, you should want that to stick around in this sport. But you know what's not sticking around? This horrendous seating system that we had in college football last year, because they made the change unanimously. Oh, what do you know? They were able to see what we already saw, which is, this doesn't make sense. Wait. You're telling me Penn State and Ohio State are ranked ahead of Boise State, but the Broncos are getting a first round bye? Arizona State is getting a first. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. But then, as is always the case in college football, whenever there's a big rule change, there's this big elephant in the room. What about Notre Dame? When TV contracts change, what about Notre Dame? When conference realignment happens, what about Notre Dame? Well, what about Notre Dame here? So the situation with Notre Dame is that they have benefited greatly from moving to a straight seeding format, because they are now eligible to be one of the teams that get a bye. Now, does their athletic director want that? I don't know. I saw that home playoff environment against Indiana. Pretty good. Kind of catapulted that team's run to the national championship game. Not bad. I'm just saying, if you're an athletic director, you got to be thinking, well, I would have loved to have won the national championship last year, but I got a home playoff game, which is, many millions of dollars more in revenue for our department, and our fans got treated to that experience, and the team won. So, thumbs up all around, right? You should absolutely not be upset at Notre Dame being able to get a bye for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are absolutely years in which they deserve it. And this is why, sidebar here, this is why if you're a Notre Dame fan thinking, of course we should be able to get a bye out there. Keep USC on your schedule. Don't dodge big games like that. And by the way, I don't think Notre Dame has instigated the discussions regarding the potential cancellation of the USC Notre Dame football series. It seems to me, from my vantage point, that Notre Dame wants to keep it going, and Lincoln Riley and USC are kind of, yeah, sure, maybe, possibly. But Tyler Wojak of Locked On Irish last week came on the show and said, yeah, Notre Dame wants to keep this going. So keep games like that on your schedule. Continue to incentivize Notre Dame to schedule good games, which for the most part, I feel they do. They lost to Northern Illinois last year. Oh man, what were they, a 28.5 point favorite or something like that? I mean, that game should have been 56-10. And instead, Northern Illinois walked into South Bend, got a win. And then that team played for a national championship. Go figure. College football, right? So I think that for Notre Dame, when you look at their schedule last year, if they had gone undefeated, would anyone have seriously objected to them getting a first round bye if they had a straight seeding system over Texas or Penn State, who lost their who lost their conference championship games? Was anyone seriously going to object to that? Notre Dame does not go out and play some cupcake of a schedule every single year. You know who they have for their first game of the season this year? Miami. It is one of the premier non-conference games in all of college football. Last year, they went at Texas A&M. They play USC every single year. They always play 5 ACC opponents. They just announced that a schedule arrangement will start with Clemson for 12 straight years, separate from their 5 ACC games, beginning in 2027. Heck, they've even got Boise State on their schedule this year. Did you know that? Boise State will go from the great state of Idaho to South Bend, Indiana to play a football game smack dab in the middle of conference play this year. I think it's sometime in October. I think that's going to be really fun. 2 playoff teams from last year who were resetting a little bit. I think that could be fun. They both played Penn State, and yeah, Notre Dame, of course, won the game in a nail-biter. And Boise State was competitive, but kept at an arm's length by the Nittany Lions there. I don't know. That could be fun. If you're trying to look for games for Notre Dame to get upset by, I've seen Boise do it before. Anyway, the thing with the Irish is their schedule, even though it's independent and unique and they don't have a conference championship, you can absolutely come up with a year in which the Irish's schedule is more deserving than several conference champions. Oh, wait, I don't even have to go very far. I can look at last year. Who had the more impressive regular season? Clemson or Notre Dame? Objectively, Notre Dame. Not just because they had a better record. I look at things beyond that. The Northern Illinois loss is horrible. Louisville also walked into Clemson's home stadium and ran them out of the building. Yeah, Death Valley was not rocking in Clemson, South Carolina that night. And you can keep going down the list. Like, I think that Notre Dame's schedule is more than enough to where if they go undefeated and get a bye, I'm not going to have some major objection. Oh, this team should have been, that team should have been rewarded. No, it depends on the year, and it depends on who wins. But you can't tell me that you would have wanted to see Clemson at 10-3 ahead of Notre Dame at 11-1. It is not that weak of a schedule. It's certainly stronger than what you have in Boise State. The Broncos got the bye last year. However advantageous that was, all 4 teams were trailing at half. Or, I don't think, that's right. Yeah, all 4 teams that had a bye were trailing at half. It's 1 year. I'm not jumping to conclusions yet. There was definitely a data point there since all 4 teams that had a bye lost and they all started slow. But again, that's the first point on Notre Dame. The second point, with the Irish being able to get a bye, do you actually think that's going to happen? Are you legitimately worried about it? Because Notre Dame would have to go undefeated in all likelihood if they can't add in a conference championship win. And they have to continue to have big games on their schedule against good teams, and they have to keep beating them. This is not talking about just getting into the playoff. This is garnering a top 4 seed, which I have contended and will continue to argue on behalf of the idea that teams that get a top 4 seed should be rewarded with a home playoff game coming off of the bye. The first round games should be the neutral site affairs because that way you place the maximum amount of urgency on the regular season. You want teams to think about how they can get a higher seed so they want to win the game in front of them rather than what you ended up having last year, which is Texas lost the SEC championship game. Better path to go forward. They went further than Georgia, who was a better team than them. Not by a ton, but certainly they were better. When you beat a team twice, I don't care what the margin is. You're better. Texas went further. Why? Because they lost. Oregon was better than Penn State. I watched them play on the field. Oregon won the football game. They look like the better team. They didn't go as far as Penn State. Why? Penn State lost. Got a better path. You need to remove that. And the way that you maximally, if that's even a word, incentivize having the best regular season you possibly can, give them a home playoff game. That's the ultimate reward, isn't it? For your athletic department, for your fans, for your program, for your team. For your team. You're, of course, tougher to beat on your home field. Look at Oregon, Ohio State last year. Oregon wins at home. They go on a neutral site off a bye, and they get run out of the stadium in the first half. 34-0 was the score, 34-8 at the break. I think it makes a little bit of a difference. Just saying. But to think that Notre Dame is easily going to be able to obtain a bye anyway, if you're upset about that, no, they're not. They're just not. Because conference championships are a win that other teams can get that Notre Dame can't get to. And sure, they can move ahead of somebody who loses a conference title game, but they're never going to leapfrog a team that wins a conference championship game. So I'm just not worried about it. I'm really not. I heard Josh Pate talking about this the other day, and I think Josh does a good job. Doesn't mean he's always right, but to go out there, it's ridiculous that Notre Dame could do that. That's not his exact word. I'm paraphrasing here. It's, they shouldn't be able to get this. Why not? Why not? They have a schedule that allows them to get there. They've got plenty of big games. They go undefeated. Good for them. Good for them. That's what I say. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. Are we back on the Texas A&M hype train? Just a little bit. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All-in-one convenience is what they are all about, because instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals, all in the same place to help you get on that upward trajectory that all these college football programs are trying to get upon, of course. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. Do we need to rev the engines on the perennial Texas A&M off-season hype train? Uh-oh. It's on the tracks. It's on the tracks. It's going. It's chugging along. Steam's coming out the top. They've got a bunch of, freight cars, and they're loading them along. Walt and Jesse and the crew are not stealing the methylamine out of there. I mean, lots of good things happening here. Doesn't mean they're all good things, or good enough at least. So, the evergreen Texas A&M debate. Will they ascend? Do they get up to the top? Can they take the next step? Let's make one thing inexplicably clear. Mike Elko makes this program better than it was before, and we saw that on the field last year. Don't forget that. Just because Texas A&M, who more than halfway through the season was in control of their own destiny to go to the SEC championship game and make the college football playoff, just because they didn't get there doesn't mean that it wasn't a successful season. Of course it was. And now you look at them and say, how do you take the next step? When do you take the next step? Is it this year? Maybe not. S&P Plus has got their schedules the 10th hardest in all of college football. Number one is Oklahoma, by the way, I believe, and Florida. Florida and Oklahoma are 1, 2 in some order in there. But ESPN's metrics have it as the 10th hardest schedule in all of college football. And they are ranked in the S&P Plus post-spring rankings number 15 overall. And S&P Plus says their average win total when you play out this season on paper, just on paper, folks, nothing else. Games aren't played there, but that's what we have to go off at the moment. Their average wins be about 7.7, which lines up with what FanDuel has. Their win total over there is 7.5. I'll tell you the most important stretch of this Texas A&M schedule that will let us know whether we should start to get excited. It's not the Notre Dame game, all right? They lost last year at home. I thought they would. You had an experienced coach against first-year coach. You know what it looked like? A staff that had been there for a couple of years against a staff that had not been there for a couple of years. And lo and behold, Notre Dame wins the game. They return that game to South Bend. If you're a Texas A&M fan, you're wondering in your head, man, if we had our coach brand new in 2024, why couldn't that have been the road game and just chalk it up as a loss and move on? And then in year two, when we're able to have a better chance to win, why couldn't that be a home game? Well, you don't get that sort of break. So Notre Dame on September 13th is certainly intriguing, but let me tell you the stretch that has to happen. Has to happen, or else it'll be back to dunking on Texas A&M, especially from Texas fans who they have to play on the road on November 28th, Friday night game there in Austin. But if they don't go 3-0 from September 27th to October 11th, it's going to be troublesome times in College Station, because that is a 3-game stretch in the SEC to begin conference play where you take on Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida. Now, I don't know whose rear end was besmooched upon for Texas A&M to play their first 3 conference games at home. Don't know how you got that, but that's the sort of break you got to be able to take advantage of here. Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida in that order. I think Auburn is okay. I think Mississippi State is improved, but not as good as Texas A&M yet. Florida should be good, but not great. You're at home, beat them on the road last year. Let me tell you, the trap game of all trap games for Texas A&M is October 18th, because you've got the look-ahead factor. They go at Arkansas that day. The look-ahead factor to LSU the following week is going to be so real. I mean, just watch for that. And, in defense of the SEC schedulers and whoever they talked to at Texas A&M when they made this thing, the next 3 games for Texas A&M are indeed on the road. So Aggie fans will go from October 11th until November 15th without seeing their team play at Kyle Field. They'll have to watch on TV or travel to one of Fayetteville, Baton Rouge, or Columbia, Missouri. So the back end of the schedule is when it gets really aside from the SEC Cupcake, of course. Don't forget November 22nd against Samford. Do you really like that, SEC fans? Do you really like? You're in the thick of the playoff and conference title hunt. Do you really like having essentially just a nothing game, what should be a tune-up game played in September? Do you really like that? I don't know. Let me know. But anyway, Samford on November 22nd. The back half of the schedule won't be defined by how they play against the Bulldogs. The back half of the schedule of Texas A&M will be about the big games, of course. I expect them to have a loss on the resume already against Notre Dame, which means between LSU, at Missouri, South Carolina, at Texas, they can only lose one other time. Just one other time if they want to find themselves in the college football playoff or in the SEC championship game. Now, they could lose 2 SEC games, and I suspect that gives you a chance with some tiebreakers to get yourself into the title game, but one of those wins is going to have to be against LSU or Texas. If you go 0-2 in those games, goodbye. Goodbye. No playoff, no SEC championship. That's not going to work out. So you got to be able to pull off one of those road victories. And when you want to win on the road, what do you need? Good quarterback play tends to help. So Marcel Reed in 11 games last year, 61% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, solid ratio. Would love to see that come down a hair. He only threw for 170 yards a game. Would love to see that tick up. But the mobility will be there barring an injury. In 11 games, 543 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. So this is a team that obviously has their head coach back and has their coaching staff intact, and also brings back 71% of their returning production from last year. That's top 10 in all of college football. My hype train meter, can I crank this to, dare I say, a 7.5? Can I crank this to a 7 on Texas A&M? There's definitely a go out and prove it element here for the Aggies, but that's not because of what Mike Elko has done. It's because of what the program has been before his arrival. Since he's gotten there, what's he done? Made them better in year 1. That's it. That's all that's happened. Is Mike Elko came in, they became a better program and a better team. Done. That's all we know so far. I'm not full steam ahead, but I'm lightly throttling forward on the Texas A&M perennial offseason hype train. The back half of that schedule, man, I tell you, it's tough. You know what's tough? Potentially losing something else that's good in college football. Earlier, I joined my guy Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs to talk about why Nebraska and Colorado should stick around. This is what that sounded like.
We are back. We're better than ever. It's Locked On Buffs. It's Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin. Spencer, we got teams in Los Angeles playing teams in New Jersey for conference play. We got teams in the Bay Area heading to Miami for conference play. And we have rivalries that have lasted for eons that are no longer being played. And one of those is Colorado and Nebraska. Now, I think it's an underrated rivalry, right? It's not Texas, Oklahoma. It's not the Army-Navy game, but it's still a fun rivalry. And I think these past 2 years have really invigorated the crowd around it because it's old school, like blue blood versus new school way of thinking and doing things in Colorado. And so they gave us great 2 matchups with Deion Sanders versus Matt Rule. They're sort of on the same timeline coaching wise, but they don't play anymore, Spencer. And it makes me sad. And I think we need to make more of a concerted effort to play rivalry games in college football. What do you say about that in general and this game in particular?
What I said earlier on this show about college football being different, and sometimes that's bad, but sometimes it's really good. Rivalries are at the top of that list. College football rivalries hit so differently than the ones in the NFL. If you're just a Colorado fan, as you probably are listening to or watching this show, or whoever else you are a fan of, if you can tell me about a specific Steelers-Ravens game, great. Good for you. I watch the NFL every week. This is not me coming on here. The NFL sucks. It's all college football. Watch my show. No. It's not anything like that. I love the NFL. It's great. To pretend, and I hope most people aren't, that the urgency or intensity around rivalries in the NFL is a major fraction of what it is in college football. It is just that, pretending. It is pretending. And so I don't think that this is a, tier 1 rivalry, the Iron Bowl, or right. If I just say Iron Bowl, you have 2 games, at least I do, and many of you do as well, that come into your head of what you envision in that game. Chris Davis with the kick six, and then the fourth and 31. Like
the Gravedigger, I believe is what it was called.
Is that what they call it? Yeah,
yeah.
But again, I see that play in my head when I hear Iron Bowl, and I of course go to Chris Davis. There goes Davis. Yeah, it's an incredible call by the late Rod Bramblett. So I think that the ability for college football to have that is something that needs to be cherished, and it's why I've discussed on my show previously that the USC Notre Dame rivalry cannot go away. Now, I think USC Notre Dame is in maybe that, tier 2 of college football rivalries, and Colorado, Nebraska is kind of, at least to younger college football fans like myself and many others, probably more in the tier 3 sort of range. Yep. But just think about it from, a neutral standpoint. Do you want to watch Colorado and Nebraska play? Yeah, of course you do, because you're going to go through the non-conference slate, circle that game and go, oh, that could be a resume booster for either of those teams. Oh, that's a measuring stick game for both of those programs. Those are recognizable brands. Like, I don't have a history of that rivalry ingrained into my psyche, but it's definitely one that can continue to become that if they would just play the darn game. You got to play it. You got to let some chippiness come out. You got to let all the weird traditions. Alabama, Auburn had the guy poisoned a tree or something way back when. Like, that sort of stuff is not okay, but it only comes about when you actually care that much. And you can't get to that level if you don't play the game. And just because 2 teams are not in the same conference, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Colorado, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, plays Colorado State every year, right?
Almost every year, yeah.
And even though Colorado is in a better conference and is a higher caliber program, that's still a great game for Colorado State to have. I bet you a lot of the fans in Fort Collins remember that game where they almost beat Colorado in Boulder a couple of years ago. I remember watching it because when Colorado's profile raises, if Colorado State goes out there and plays a game like that, raises the level of that the profile of that program, right? So I think there are a lot of advantages to playing those sorts of games. Like, imagine if Clemson and South Carolina stopped playing. They don't. They play every single year. It's great. It was a great game last year. It has been in the past. When you have the opportunity to schedule a matchup that means a little bit more to those fans, can draw more of a national audience, and also has national relevance, you've got to find a way to play those games. Because if you're Colorado, you want quality non-conference opponents, I hope, right? If you're trying to build an at-large playoff resume, you've got to have good wins on there. Well, Nebraska is going to be one of those wins. Like, I know they just got to a bowl game for the first time in a while, but Matt Rule's a good coach. And at the very least, you can get some brand building, because that's a game that people are going to watch in the non-conference slate. So I think there are just so many benefits and so few drawbacks, because Colorado could get the same football outcome, from a resume standpoint, if they play Minnesota, for instance. Is that as interesting of a game to literally anybody? No, of course not. Of course not. And to pretend otherwise, I think, is foolish. And anytime, I hate that realignment crushed Texas A&M. I'm glad that realignment brought it back, but we've lost Kansas, Missouri over the years. That's kind of the tier that I'd put, Colorado, Nebraska in there. I'd like to see the Buffs and Cornhuskers continue to play. I would never want to see South Carolina and Clemson stop playing. You just keep going down the list. You've got to play those games. The in-state games between Florida and Miami and Florida State, phenomenal. Go play those games every chance you get. That's where I feel college football is going down somewhat of the right path.
Yeah, and I think people also forget that rivalries, granted, Texas and Texas A&M, always a great rivalry. Auburn, Alabama, has always been a great rivalry. But there was a point where they weren't like the best rivalries in college football. They had to grow into it, right? And you could grow into a rival. Like I talk about this all the time with Colorado and Spencer. This is who we're getting instead of Colorado State and Nebraska this year, because Colorado doesn't play either of them. They get Georgia Tech, which will be an interesting game, and Delaware and Wyoming. Woo! So we're missing out on rivalry games, right? And also, Colorado had the same problem at our former employer, if you will, the Pac-12, right? You were locked on Pac-12. I was a Pac-12 PA.
All right,
literally ripped. And they didn't have a rival there. They were kind of that odd man out. They were the new kid at school that kind of ate lunch by himself and was like, hey, like nobody hated him, right? But nobody was like, yeah, that's my guy. Yeah, it's just like, it's Colorado.
Well, and I've thought about that before. I think the Pac-12, which I understand this wasn't one of their huge missteps that led to the downfall of it, of course. But the attempt when Colorado and Utah joined, which I thought was a good move for the league, they tried to pit those schools against each other, right? Mm-hmm. They put them during rivalry week, right? That's when they usually played, and they tried to make it's the mountain schools, and yeah, it never had. It's not that it wasn't an interesting game from time to time. I mean, Colorado wasn't good for most of it, so Utah got the better of them. But you can't force that stuff. You can't fake it. You can't rush it either. And so when you have already built in history to a particular matchup, you've got to take advantage of that. USC Notre Dame been playing for over a century. You can't just replicate that out of thin air. It doesn't work that way. And so when time and effort and dollars and all this stuff has gone into making a matchup what it is, I would not like to see that just thrown to the wayside.
Yeah, and my other point too is Nebraska is sort of, to me, and I could be wrong here, but Nebraska feels like that in the Big Ten, where it's like, yeah, everyone's like Ohio State's everyone's rival because everyone wants to beat the best team. Michigan's everyone's rival because they want to beat the biggest brand. But who is Nebraska's true rival in the Big Ten, right? I don't have a team that comes to mind. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? I feel like the
I don't think they have one.
Right. The team's most associated with them is Iowa, which they have other rivals. Minnesota, who I don't think moves the needle for anyone. Shout out to PJ Fleck, though. Keep rowing that boat.
He's solid. PJ Fleck's solid. It's nothing wrong with PJ Fleck. They were like an 8-win team last year.
It's fine.
He's good.
Fine. It's like Ross Geller said, I'm fine, right?
Yeah.
Two teams.
I'm fine.
Two teams that don't really have a rival that are passing on playing what could be a rivalry. And here's some of the storylines before we move on, right? You have Dion versus Matt Rule, right? They both started coaching the same year or at these schools, right? Colorado, Nebraska, respectively. Two young quarterbacks, Dylan Raiola, Julian Lewis. They'd get to square off one or two times, right? You have that. You have, they split the series, if you will, right? Colorado won the first one, Nebraska won the second. So it's like there's so many fun storylines that are just being like, oh, well, maybe we'll circle back in 2037 when like nobody's here. It's like all these guys are well into their careers as real estate agents or the coaches are gone. But like, I just feel like it's one of the many things in college football that we struggle with, which is just doing the right thing. It feels like so many times lately, it's like, what's the right thing for the sport? Okay, I'm going to do the complete opposite. So bring back the rivalry, save it, preserve it, do whatever you got to do.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.